Hello everybody and welcome to the first lesson for GCSE Religious Studies. In this lesson we're going to start the first of our topics, which is on the general beliefs and theological teachings of Christianity. So this first lesson is just going to give us an overview of the nature of God within the Christian doctrine. And so essentially what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the number of different beliefs as to the nature of God within Christianity. And in this lesson, we're going to talk about the basic characteristics, essentially, of God. That's what we mean when we talk about the nature of God. We'll explore the meaning of each of these different characteristics, and we'll provide some biblical quotations in support of these characteristics. For the most part, when we do these lessons, when we look at things relating to, for example, the Holy Trinity, in a couple of lessons' time, the nature of and teachings of Jesus Christ, we're going to talk about them within the context of various biblical quotations. And any quotations that I've missed or that I've not included that you could also add to this, add to the roster, essentially, of quotes to support different points, I'll try and put the passages in the description down below. So the first most major concept within Christianity, at least within the modern doctrines of Christianity that exist today, is the concept of monotheism. I say modern doctrines because for those who want to maybe study theology through A-level and maybe even onto university, you will learn about concepts relating to things like Gnosticism and very heretical different Christian thinkings that believed in multiple gods. But in reality, the Bible teaches that there is one God, and this is known as monotheism, okay? And it is the first and most fundamental Christian idea. So, essentially, compared to other religions, so for example Hinduism and Buddhism are very good examples of this, the concept of monotheism is that there is one single God. A counterexample, as I mentioned, to monotheism is, for example, Hinduism or ancient Greek mythology, which is a polytheistic belief, the idea that there are multiple gods. At least within ancient Greek mythology, you have people like Zeus, you have Hades, you have Poseidon, etc., etc. These are all different types of gods. This is polytheism. Monotheism is the idea that we have one. So that's what Christianity teaches in its most fundamental beliefs. There is one God. But what is this God like? What is the nature of this particular God? Well, there are a number of characteristics that sort of fit into a broad category, or a similar set of characteristics that are similar in both their linguistic tropes, how they actually sound, and also what they mean. So for the first one, we say that God is omnipotent. This is the belief that God is, quote, all-powerful, okay? And it means that essentially God is able to do anything that is logically possible in nature. Now, when we're talking about the sort of philosophy of religion, it is important to note that when we're talking about possibility and the possibility to do anything, some Christians make the delineation between what is physically possible versus what is logically possible, okay? So there is a difference, for example, between doing something that is physically impossible, so making pigs fly. God could essentially do that because they are omnipotent, but God couldn't do, for example, something that is logically impossible, so making a triangle have four sides. The definition of a triangle is a shape with three sides. So it would be impossible logically, it wouldn't even make sense in our brains to suggest that God could do something like making a triangle with four sides, because what he would be doing is making a square. That is something, again, a little bit more of an advanced idea within the theology and within the philosophy of religion, just a general idea to get you thinking about the concept of omnipotence and the concept of being able to really argue and challenge these beliefs and have a look at how we can talk about explanations for these beliefs in the nature of God. The second of the characteristics is the idea that God is omniscient. Again, the omni being an interesting point of reference, the idea that it is all something, and this being all-knowing. That's what omniscience means. Now, it means that God knows everything that could possibly be known about the past, the present, and the future. Again, this would challenge some people's conceptions of free will. If God knows everything that's going to happen, if God knows everything that I'm going to say and everything that I'm going to do tomorrow, what I'm having for lunch, for example, then surely how is it possible for somebody to have free will? This is, again, an idea within the philosophy of religion, not necessarily within the theology of Christianity. God is also omnibenevolent. This meaning that God is all-loving. God loves all and acts within the lives of human beings in order to show the love of God. This means when we talk about God being acting within the lives of human beings, this suggests that God is immanent within the world. So, not only is God immanent, as in acting within all of us and acting within the lives of human beings, we also suggest that God is transcendent. It means that he is also above everything else as well. These two ideas are somewhat contradictory in terms of their beliefs, but because God is able to do anything and know anything and love anything, then essentially we can reconcile these two beliefs together. Now, when I was doing my GCSEs many years ago, in fact, I used to always get mixed up all of these different omni words. So I used a very interesting way of remembering which ones mean what. So omnipotent. Potent, it sounds a little bit like powerful. They both have the word P, the letter P, in there. So omnipotent or omnipotent is one that is easy to remember. But when I was trying to get mixed up between omniscient and omnibenevolent, I would believe I would use omniscient. The word the niscient bit sounds a little bit like, or looks a little bit like, the word science. Omniscience, okay? And science is something that clever people do, so it's to do with knowing things, therefore omniscience means all-knowing. And then the final one will be omnibenevolent. That's how I used to remember what all of these different words meant. So if that is any consolation for you, if you struggle with learning what each of these means and getting mixed up with them, omnipotent, omnipotent, P, powerful, omniscience, science, sounds a little bit like science. Clever people who do science know a lot of things. It's all about knowing, therefore omniscience is all knowing. And then the final one, omnibenevolent, is all loving. So that's how we talk about the nature of God. So you may already know, describing God in a certain way can present certain challenges. So I have mentioned these challenges already when we've spoken about them as we went through them. But there are other challenges that one can create. So for example, if God is omnipotent, if he is all-powerful and can do anything, can God create a stone that he cannot lift? This is an interesting little paradox that you might encounter if you're doing a philosophy of religion class, maybe if you take A-level philosophy. This creates a paradox, since if God can create a stone that he cannot lift, then he'd be omnipotent in the sense that he can create the stone, but he wouldn't be omnipotent because he wouldn't be able to lift the stone, because he's created a stone he cannot lift. On the other hand, if he can't create a stone that he cannot lift, then he is not omnipotent because he cannot create a stone that he cannot lift. So what happens in this particular regard? It means that in both answers to this question, God cannot be omnipotent since he cannot create the stone. Now, of course, there are different theological answers to this question. You could make the claim that I made in the previous slide, that the concept of creating a stone that you cannot lift isn't something that is impossible physically, but it is logically impossible. It's a little bit like creating a triangle with four sides, or creating a bachelor that is married. This is the idea of the idea of the way in which we categorize things in language is something that means that we cannot do something where we categorize it in a different way. We define a triangle to be a shape that has three sides. So therefore, creating a triangle with four sides doesn't make sense within our conception of language, because we are not therefore creating a triangle, we're creating a square. The same thing we could make the same reference to this paradox here. The idea of creating a stone you cannot lift isn't just physically impossible, but it's logically impossible. It's impossible to create a stone that you cannot lift. Moreover, there are also challenges relating to the concept that we describe in theology as the inconsistent triad. So we've already spoken about the concept of God being all-powerful. He can do anything and do anything in any particular way. We also know that God is all-knowing in the sense that he knows everything that is going to happen and everything that everyone is going to do. But we also know he's all-loving. He loves everybody equally and to an infinite amount. So if we can have the idea of God being all powerful and all loving, why then does evil exist in the world? Surely if evil exists in the world, then God is either not all powerful in the sense that he cannot eliminate evil in the world, or he could be all powerful, but he's just not all loving. He could eliminate all the evil in the world, but he doesn't want to, because he doesn't love us in the kind of way that you might suggest that he does. This is what is known as the inconsistent triad. It becomes very difficult to be able to reconcile the beliefs of having omnipotence, all-powerful, having omnibenevolence, having an all-loving God, with the idea that evil exists in the world. Now, the ways in which theologians and philosophers have gotten around this fact is by looking at justifications for the existence of God and the existence of evil in the world. Now, this is known as a theodicy, and many of the early church fathers, so people like Augustine and also Irenaeus, have developed their own ideas of theodicies, and we will talk about the problem of evil in the next lesson.